Erev Tov, good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this evening's community-wide City Council Town Hall. My name is Tully Hartstark. I have the pleasure of serving as one of the principals of SAR High School, and we are grateful for the opportunity that we have this evening as we prepare for the New York Council District 11 special election. I want to express our deep gratitude to all of the candidates who have joined us here tonight. It is really a great privilege for us. I would love to say a thank you to each and every one of you, but I know that our team of high school leaders would like to do that, and I'm going to give them their space. But I want to express our thanks for your being here tonight. I want to also express a tremendous yasher koach, job wonderfully done by Eitan Zanger and by Tyler Fishman, our co-leaders of the Politics, Election, and Governance Club, to Zach Cocker and Kira Pollard. You guys have really done tremendous work in bringing us all together tonight, and we are looking forward to learning and talking. I want to express gratitude as well to Dr. Rivka Schwartz, advisor to the club, and Rabbi Avi Bloom on the tech side for making tonight happen. And again, thank you to everyone on this call for joining us. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Eitan Zanger, who co-leads the Politics, Elections, and Government Club. Eitan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hartstark. Hello and welcome to the SAR High School Community-Wide City Council District 11 Town Hall, hosted by the EPG, Elections, Politics, and Governance Club. While we can't see everyone's faces or names, it's amazing to see so many people joining us tonight. My name is Eitan Zanger, and I'm a junior who lives in Riverdale. I'm the founder and head of the EPG Club, along with Tyler Fishman, whom you'll hear from soon. Tyler and I started the EPG Club this year after we both worked on political campaigns this summer to give club attendees an opportunity to hear from people in the political arena who come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives on issues. Even though as high school students, we are not old enough to yet vote, the debated issues affect us now and will affect us for more years and decades to come. When we heard that there was going to be a special election in our city council district, we jumped at the opportunity to give members of the community a chance to hear from the candidates. All candidates running in the race have been invited, and all candidates are attending tonight. And before we begin, I just wanted to express our deep thanks to our faculty advisor, Dr. Schwartz, Director of Marketing and Communications, Lauren Katz, Assistant Principal, Rabbi Danny Kroll, Director of Technology, Rabbi Bloom, Jonas Sperling-Milner, Kira Pollard, and Zach Cocker, the other people who helped us put together this on the student side. And before we hear from the candidates, I'm going to pass it over to Tyler, who's going to introduce himself and give a short few remarks about the 2021 municipal elections, the role of a city council member in New York City, and what this election, why it's happening, and what this district covers. And thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you so much, Eitan. I am Tyler Fishman, and I'm the other moderator for this evening's event. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we have with us the 6 candidates who are running in the special election to represent the 11th district in the New York City Council. The New York City Council is the legislative branch of New York City government. It serves as a check on the mayor, passes local laws, and the city budget. As the city incurs great financial stress from the COVID-19 pandemic, the operating budget has been significantly reduced. This will come up many times tonight. This seat was made vacant when Andrew Cohen, the previous councilman, was appointed to a judgeship. This special election is to fill the council seat from the special election day on March 23rd until the end of Cohen's term on December 31st. This election is nonpartisan, meaning there are no Democrats or Republicans. There will be another election to fill the seat from 2022 to 2026, for which primaries will be held on June 23rd and elections will be held on November 2nd on Election Day. This is, interestingly enough, one of the first elections in New York to use ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting means you can now rank your candidates in order of preference rather than just voting for one candidate. And that will be considered in determining a winner. If no candidate gets more than 50% of the votes, then all preferences will be taken into account in determining the winner, meaning that the candidate who receives the most first place votes will not necessarily be the winner of the election. We have more information on that, as well as the candidates, dates, and voter registration on our website, which is linked in the chat. Now it's time to hear from the candidates. We will begin with opening statements.
And just quickly before we start the opening statements, just a little bit about our format for tonight. So we're a few moments, we're gonna start off with 90-second opening statements, followed by a round of 45-second responses to questions that we wrote up beforehand. We will then transition into a 15-second quick answer question round, and then followed by some more 45-second answers. And those will be from a mix of questions written up beforehand, as well as questions submitted live during the event, which can be submitted using the Q&A function of the Zoom webinar. And then finally, we will end off the night with 1 minute closing remarks by each candidate. And now we will start off with opening statements. And in the candidates' opening statements, we ask that they tell us a little bit about themselves. What about your background makes you most qualified to serve as a city council member of a massive city like New York City? And what inspired you to run, and what distinguishes you from the other candidates? And finally, what your top priorities, if elected, would be. And we're going to start off with Ms. Mino Laura.
Thank you so much, Eitan, Tyler, everyone, for hosting this. I'm so happy to be here tonight. My name is Mino Laura, and I'm a Dominican mom from the Bronx. I survived COVID. I've worked minimum wage jobs, and I was without health insurance for over a decade. I'm an educator and the executive director of People's Theater Project, a nonprofit delivering free cultural programs to 1,000 people, young people in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan every year. Through my work as an advocate with the New York Immigration Coalition, I've brought students to Albany to fight for school funding. I've partnered with the governor's office to make sure that vaccinations didn't include invasions of privacy by ICE. And I brought together this summer 14 arts and culture groups to create a virtual camp for 200 kids and secured the funding to operate it. These are the battles that we need to keep fighting until we win all of them. As an artist and a teacher, as an organizer and an activist, running for office was not part of my plan. But I kept seeing the same injustices over and over again. So here I am. In this special election, I am proud to be endorsed by the Working Families Party, CWA, Jewish Vote, NYIC Action, Citizen Action, Run for Something, and No IDC New York. I'm the only immigrant and woman of color in the race. And I'm the only candidate currently running a $1 million organization through this pandemic while keeping my staff employed. I know what it takes to do the impossible, and having worked with young people my entire life, I know that all of you do too. And I am excited for the conversation today. Thank you.
Next, we are going to hear from Mr. Dan Paternak.
Thank you, Eitan. Have that? Oh, can you hear me? Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Eitan. First, good evening. My name is Dan Paternak. I'd like to say how incredibly impressed I am with the EPG Club and what you guys have done to put this incredible forum together. I teach mock trial at a school, and just to see this level of civic engagement is amazing. Thank you. As I said, my name is Dan Paternak. I was born and raised in the Bronx. I have been in this district my entire life. I am the only candidate in this race who is an attorney. I am the only candidate in this race who has run a city agency. That city agency was Bronx Community Board 8, which I've been on for 12 years right now. I've been the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee for 8 years. I've been a vice chair of the Land Use Committee for 4 years. In those 12 years, I've actually worked with SAR on a number of different projects and issues. I've had the opportunity to work with Rabbi Krause, with Executive Director Deborah May, on quite a few traffic issues through some large projects of the school. As a council member, I have quite a few priorities. The number one priority is setting up the best constituent services office and being incredibly responsive to community, which I have a lot of experience working with community. I know, faith-based schools, particularly SAR, is a big part of our community. And safety of our students is a priority for me as well, as well as other issues. My big issues for being a council member citywide are changing the model of affordable housing, pandemic-related educational deficiencies, making sure students are up to bat, and making sure that every family has enough food on their table. I look forward to the forum tonight. Thank you so much.
And next we are going to be hearing from Mr. Eric Dinowitz.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, especially to the students for organizing this. My name is Eric Dinowitz. I was born and raised here in the Northwest Bronx, where my wife and I are now raising our twin boys. And I've been doing community service since a young age, parks cleanups, meal deliveries, tutoring. And with those values, I became a special education teacher right out of college in our community at the JFK campus. And immediately I saw the needs of our children extend far beyond the classroom. It broke my heart to see children come into my classroom hungry, homeless. And when I was elected UFT chapter leader, I saw the needs of my colleagues extended beyond the walls of the principal's office. As chair of the Aging Committee on Bronx Community Board 8, I see the way our city has failed too many of our seniors, the fear they live with, most recently, of course, with COVID-19 and the vaccine distribution. My career, my community service has been rooted here in our part of the Bronx, our corner of the Bronx, addressing the very problems that I witness every day and in making sure that we have a voice and an advocate. It's local service for our community that's recognized by a litany of elected officials, unions, and advocacy groups, such as Congressman Torres and Espaillat, the UFT, DC 37, 32BJ, and HTC. We're often provided with a Manhattan-centric vision for our part of the Bronx or ceding power to developers. But we need to make sure that we have a voice. I want to make sure we bring vaccines here to where people are, reopen our schools safely, especially for our most vulnerable students, and support our businesses. I'm running to ensure our community has a strong voice in the council, that our children, working families, older adults, and people with disabilities have a strong advocate in City Hall.
Next, we're going to hear from Ms. Jessica Haller.
Thanks, Eitan. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for hosting me. My name is Jessica Haller. I'm an SAR mom. I have been an SAR mom for over 15 years. And as many of you know, I'm also an entrepreneur, and I've been a climate advocate and activist since 2006. The reason I am running is because of all of you. I am running for office because we have come to the moment where if we do not have elected officials who understand the severity of the crises we face and understand how to solve it, we will never get through to the middle of this century. I'm someone who, for decades, has always thought 10 years ahead. So always looked into the future and thought, what solutions can we build today to satisfy our needs in the future? Which means I have been mentoring startups and socially responsible businesses as a mentor and a consultant for many years, helping them thrive. I'm the only one in this race who has not-for-profit, for-profit, and government experience. I built a constituent management system for the New York City Comptroller's Office, which enabled the comptroller to relate to and communicate with thousands and tens of thousands of New Yorkers. I've also been able to bring innovative things to SAR, to bring kids into the woods. I'm sure many of you in your lives have gone into the Riverdale woods because 10 years ago, your very innovative teachers said, oh, we're gonna have these things called clusters, and how do we engage people in the community? And I said, hey, we're gonna come in. I really look forward to talking with everyone tonight and hearing what we all have to say. Thanks.
All right, next we're gonna hear from Mr. Kevin Pasmino. I think you're, yep, there we go.
Yeah. How you doing? Thanks, Etan, and thank you, Tyler, again for setting this up. You guys are awesome, and I really appreciate all the hard work you guys put into this. My name is Kevin Pasmino. I'm a first-generation American. My mother is from Colombia. My father is from Ecuador. I was raised by my mother with my brother in low-income housing. My mom worked up to 4 jobs at certain times in order to make sure that my brother and I did not want for nothing. I grew up in Rockland County. I went to Suffern High School and I graduated SUNY Albany. For the past 17 years, I've worked in film and TV production. About 7 years ago, I joined the DGA, became a DGA member. I could have joined faster by using, affirmative action, but I did not want to be considered like a good Latino director. I wanted to be considered a great, just straight up director. I have lived in North Riverdale, just a few blocks away from the school, with my wife and 4 children, my 17-year-old and my 10-year-old and my 8-year-old all going to public school. And my youngest just turned 2 last week. As an assistant director in film and TV production, there's what I do is I basically break down scripts into analytical information and then create the schedules and work out the logistics to facilitate that shoot. And then I on the day, facilitate that and coordinate that, which can be quite complicated when dealing with, car crashes and pyrotechnics on the live street. I got involved in politics because I'm, deeply disheartened with the mismanagement of our current mayor and our super majority that's our. And yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we're gonna go to Mr. Carlton Berkeley.
Hello, and Eaton and Tyler and all you guys. All right, this I want to congratulate you guys because we need more of this of young people like you guys, because whatever we do, you're right, is going to eventually fall back on you guys. So to have students come together and talk to candidates, I think that's a very good thing, and I hope that it continues. Well, my name is Carlton Berkeley. I'm a retired New York City detective. I was born and raised in Harlem. I've been living up here in the Bronx now in the Wakefield section for almost 25 years. I've been married 36 years to one lady. That's my wife. I have 3 grown children now and 2 grandchildren. When I joined the police department, and by the way, I'm a product of public schools, all right? I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. There's a term that you guys have to ask your parents about. When I was coming up, my parents was on what we call welfare. All right. It's different now, but like I said, you guys never heard of it. But after this debate, actually your parents, what it is just growing up poor. All right. So what I did is I became a police officer back in 1984. And unfortunately, I found out that it was a lot of racism in the police department. So I joined 2 organizations, the 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care and the National Latino Officers Association. And we fought the racism in the police department. Now, I've been retired 17 years and I'm a member of several other organizations. And recently we changed the law that was on the books that once in a while, when you're watching the news, you see someone coming home from doing for being arrested and doing some time, 20 or 30 years. We found out that they did not commit the crime. And the reason why they didn't the reason why they did the time was because the district attorney had this law called CPL 240, which gave the district attorney the right to withhold exculpatory evidence against someone. Exculpatory is, to prove someone innocent. So myself, along with members of the organization, we just changed that law that was on the books for over 50 years to make it equal for everyone. Also, I led the fight for a law 50A, which the police department is trying to overturn now. What that law does...
Sorry, the time is a bit up. Could we
I'm sorry. Okay.
Just a reminder for the candidates, Zach and then Kira will take over later. Zach is going to be holding up the green sign when the time is going, the yellow paper with 15 seconds left when there's 15 seconds left, and the red paper which says time it's time to stop, and we will let candidates go a few minutes, sorry, not a few minutes, a few seconds over that, and then we will cut off from now on. And I know some people came in a bit late at the start, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page of that, and keep an eye on that. And now I'm going to pass it over to Tyler for the next question.
So we will be getting the questions of the night. Our first question aptly concerns education. So as SAR students, we and many in attendance are among the 200,000 private school students in the city of New York, making up nearly 20% of the student body. The city provides security funding for private schools, but unlike the state, provides no aid inside the classrooms. Do you support additional aid to these schools? And if so, where would you target that money? First, we have Mr. Dinowitz to answer that question.
Thank you. As many of you out there know, I taught for almost 14 years as a special education teacher. And time again, whether it was staffing or resources, we saw it during the pandemic with devices. Our public schools are underfunded. Our public schools are underfunded. We don't have enough teachers in our public schools. We don't have enough social workers and guidance counselors. We don't have enough resources in our public schools. And my belief is that public schools are there for everyone. And until public schools are properly funded, again, the resource that is there for every child, I don't see providing more money for private school education.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. Up next, we have Ms. Laura.
Yes, I agree with my colleague. I agree with Eric. I think public schools are severely underfunded and under-resourced. And we have 1.1 million students there. And it is our responsibility as government to make sure that we're creating an equitable educational system for all of us, so that all students have the opportunities that you all have, and we can start creating a more equitable place. So I believe we need to be investing as the city, funding for arts programs and electives and political clubs and civic engagement clubs like this one, and social emotional resources for our public schools first, before we move on the conversation to private and parochial schools.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Up next, we have Mr. Berkeley.
I don't really know if private schools can get public funding. All right, I don't know. I'm not a career politician, but I do agree with Dinowitz, and I do agree with Mino that the public school system is really suffering. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from private, but we live in a world where we have the haves and the have-nots. Right. And I really want to be honest with you. And I believe the most that really are in need should get. So, but I would look into it.
Thank you, Mr. Berkeley. Up next, we have Ms. Haller.
One of the amazing things that happened last year was that on March 3rd, I believe, Tuesday morning, 7:04 a.m., we all got a text that SAR was closed. And the next day, Avi Blue made it so that you were all up and learning in Zoom. About a week later, I was able to write an article that was published in the press talking about the digital divide. We have the ability, schools like SAR have the ability to show us the art of what's possible. And we now need to take the responsibility of making sure that every kid across the city has access to technology and broadband, and their parents know how and have everything that they need so that they don't fall further behind. And I think that we have to keep working on that.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Up next, we have Mr. Paternak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I hope you can hear me now. So, look, for now, I think the priority needs to be our public schools with the funding, just because there are so many deficiencies right now within our public schools, to the extent that there are, areas where, there are certain services that the city or state could provide, for private schools, which you're seeing in some other areas, those should continue.
Thank you, Mr. Paternak. Up next, we have Mr. Pasmino.
All right. So, I'm actually for pro school choice and for charter schools. And so I definitely think that we should be able to open up money towards, anybody who attends public schools to go to schools of their choice. And I do think that, the mayor has really mismanaged our public school system. So I think our best bet would be able to give, everybody the opportunity to have education like people who go to private school. A lot of my plan and what I want to initiate is community-based solutions and getting the community basically offer tax breaks for volunteerism. So, I'm totally open to talking to private schools and finding out what the issues you guys have and whatnot. And maybe we could work out some form of volunteerism to work out any issues that you're dealing with. But I do think that the money does need to go towards the public school students at first and offer them the ability to go to private schools like yourselves or charter schools and whatnot. But I do believe that, there's other solutions than tax dollars for issues.
So now our next question may seem like a bit of a contrast to this one, but I think they actually go hand in hand. So as a lot of you mentioned, with the COVID-19 pandemic raging on, educational inequities, which are already present prior to the pandemic, have been greatly exacerbated. Public school students, unlike us at SAR, have not been able to be in school since March of last year. And there are real concerns that they are falling behind. In addition, many students just don't have the adequate resources to learn remotely, and whether that be because they don't have the right Wi-Fi, the right devices. How do you plan to tackle this issue and ensure that every student in the city receives a strong education in the COVID world? And we're going to start with Mr. Paternak for this question.
Sure, great question. One of my top issues. So one, we need to essentially start speaking to the school administrators and the teachers within the schools in our district, to figure out what exactly our local schools need and where they really are with their students right now. We have to first, get a grip on where they are. Second, to the extent that any students don't have Wi-Fi, we need to make sure that they are getting Wi-Fi to be learning at home immediately. And that's like an essential service that we need for the folks. Beyond that, we need to create I believe, tutoring programs and work with our nonprofits to provide those ancillary services to the students who are behind right now. So we need to identify those areas, and then we have to get the resources to those students who are the most affected and need the most help.
And next up will be Mr. Berkeley.
Well, I sort of agree with Dan also. I would like to just sort of partner with the cable companies, because it's been told to me that they can provide, proper Wi-Fi. Listen, this whole pandemic caught us, by surprise. I don't want to blame everything on the mayor, but it's a shame that our kids are falling behind. But this is through no fault of their own. We also need, before we open up any other schools, right, we have to make sure that we have the proper PPE equipment, and we have to listen to the staff. We have to make sure that everything is safe before we let our kids go back into the school. And then we need to have the community, these other community programs help with the tutoring of our students. It's not their fault, and it's a shame that they're going through this, but we have to do all we can to hopefully keep their grades up and keep them energized.
And next, we're going to go with Mr. Pasmino.
So I agree with both, actually, with Mr. Paternak and Mr. Berkeley. We definitely need to make sure that we open schools safely, and we reassure the teachers that they're safe. So if we need to make sure that we get the vaccines to them sooner for those who want it, then we do. I think that we need to, I think Wi-Fi is definitely something that's becoming something that is 100% a need. So for people who live in low income homes and in NYCHA and buildings who are less fortunate, I think those buildings should all be provided with Wi-Fi directly for free for all those people who live in those buildings. And then, I think that, I disagree. I think that, accountability is from the top down. So it comes to the mayor. And that's the reason why I got involved to try to run for city council, so that I could help organize our district and help our people in our district.
Thank you so much. Now we're gonna have Miss Laura.
Thank you. Yes, in addition to the divide, the digital divide, we do need to be prioritizing digital access, broadband access, devices that have Wi-Fi in them, because that's what we're seeing and hearing from our students. So I think in addition to talking to teachers and principals, we need to talk to parent coordinators. Parent coordinators run the schools. They know individually what parents, what families need, who's living with the abuela, who's living with who, what are their situations, and how we can meet their needs. That is essential. And then when it comes to bridging that gap, in addition to the academic support, we're going to need trauma-informed social emotional support. Our kids are traumatized. This has been a lot. Many of our families have had family members who have died, who have not, they haven't been able to see them. So as we move forward, we cannot forget the trauma-informed education that needs to be prioritized too.
Now we're going to have Ms. Haller. Thank you so much, Ms. Laura.
Thank you. We know we have an obligation to make sure that everyone is educated equitably. It's part of our value system. This requires a mobilization, right? The mobilization that we're able to do and the radical flexibility we're able to use is a lot easier for 1,000 students than it is for 1.1 million. So what we need to do is follow the data. Data shows us and science shows us it's best to get kids in school. We need to get them Wi-Fi. Data shows us that we have to start in places where it isn't, like homeless shelters and areas where kids are in transient situations. And we need to help families. We need to teach parents how to help their children. We need to make sure parents and grandparents understand how to use the technology that's provided. So those are some of the ways I would start, and I would use data to inform the direction.
Thank you. And then finally for this question, Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. You know, as soon as schools closed, as a public school teacher, I saw the detrimental impact it had on our children, not just on their academics, but on their social, emotional, and mental health. And it was devastating. We can't support our children on a computer. One thing we could do in the city council is hold the city and the mayor accountable, because one of the problems I saw was the lack of planning and the lack of communication to our children and to our families, and yes, to our teachers. We need to hold them accountable in order to have a plan. As we reopen, it has to be done safely. We have to prioritize our younger children. We have to prioritize children with special needs, English language learners. And we have to stop pretending this, we have to stop using this one size fits all model and pretending that all children and all schools are the same.
Thank you so much. Our next question concerns the economy. The pandemic has left many people, both business owners and residents alike, unable to pay their rent. The city government has passed many relief packages to assist tenants and residents, but financial hardship still affects many New Yorkers. How do we help businesses harmed by the pandemic fill vacant retail spaces and assist individuals who may be unable to pay their rent? First is Mr. Pasmino.
Well, I think we need to pass the Small Business Jobs Security Act, Safety Act, and I also think that we need to, I think what we need to make sure to do, and one of my main goals is to get all taxpayer funded subsidies, whether state or federal, go directly towards the people in our local businesses and whatnot. So in terms of like any issue that we have in terms of like, feeding the poor and whatnot, I'd rather have the money go directly to our restaurants and delis so they can lower the prices for the people in the community. And as well, we know who in our community are homeless, who needs the extra help. So I'd like to get that money to them. I'd also like to get, a lot of, the 11th district to be more integrated and whatnot. So holding festivals and restaurant week style things, business events, so that we can get, the people of the 11th district to patronize each other's businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Pasmino. Next up is Mr. Berkeley.
Well, this pandemic, right, has more or less affected everyone. All right, as far as people are concerned, people need to stay in their homes by any and every means necessary. All right, what I would propose is that the government, along with the federal government, along with the state, we have to bail these people out, and we have to bail small business out. Every time something happened with big business, they got bailed out. We just have to bail small business, and we have to bail the people out. Give them all the aid that they need. And when it comes to small business, we have to also have some rent stabilization for small businesses. Because like I said, this pandemic is not by anybody's fault by their own. We just need to bail the people and the small business out.
Thank you, Mr. Berkeley. Up next is Mr. Paternak.
Yeah. I've been saying for a while right now, as city council members, we have like certain powers. So what I would do to help small businesses stay in business right now is to give, real estate tax abatements, which they are responsible for. I would give DEP water discounts to the small businesses right now. I would work on getting grants to some of these small businesses where we can, to help with their Con Ed bills. That's immediate financial relief that we can do and help with right now to keep them in business. Many of our small business owners are struggling. They're going into their own savings just to stay open. They're going into debt just to stay open. We need to help them. So for me, not only that, but to help them navigate the federal loan programs out there. As your council member, I would certainly help open up my office to help any small business fill out those forms. I have the know-how to do it. I'll make sure my staff does as well.
Thank you, Mr. Paternak.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. I did one of my small business tours last week. I went to KMJ Loveware, which is on Riverdale Avenue. The owner, Raquel, designs and sells clothing for specially adapted clothing for children with special needs. And it is just her. And so she needs help, two types of help: long-term help with her rent. We need to pass vacancy tax and commercial rent regulation. But she needs someone to help her right now navigate all of the grants and programs available, because right now they're going to a lot of bigger businesses or businesses with more than one employee. It is difficult to navigate all these city, state, and federal programs. Additionally, part of the solution is the vaccine. We need to bring the vaccine to where people are. Lean on our community centers, use mobile vaccination sites, because it's going to be a lot easier to go out and go to our stores once people are vaccinated.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. Up next is Ms. Haller.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. There isn't much difference between all of the policies that most of us will put forward: passing the Business Survival Act, reducing the pressure on the small business by commercial rent reform, and giving relief to the small landlord who is requiring the rent, the small business to pay the rent. So we need to relieve the pressure across the supply chain over there. I've started and run two small businesses when I had to shut down. So it's also a question of taking care of your people and making sure they have access to the healthcare that they need, making sure that that they're employed, because everything is around there. So we need to also support healthcare at the New York State level and work with the federal government and the state government to make sure everyone is taken care of.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Up next is Ms. Laura.
Yeah, I agree. We need to pass the Small Jobs Survival Act, which protects our small businesses and gives them relief and allows them in negotiating, gives them more power when they're negotiating their rent with commercial lease assistance. I also think we need to pass a commercial vacancy tax, because right now it's easier for landlords. It's more profitable for them to keep it vacant than to rent it out. So we need to change that. We need to change that law, make sure that happens. And we need rent relief. We need to be putting our people first. Our small businesses employ our neighbors. Our small businesses bring vibrancy to our community and meet our needs. So we need to, yes, bail them out, as Carlton say, make sure that they have money at the end of this moratorium, and renters too, so that they can stay in their homes, they can stay in their businesses, and then they can come back once this is over and we're ready to come out and safely.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. And our next question is also related to the economy. So as students and as young people, we really care about our future and what the state and stability of New York City is for years to come. And due to the pandemic, New York City is facing like a great amount of economic turmoil, as Tyler mentioned, as many of you mentioned in the previous question. Unemployment in the city was nearly double the national average during the pandemic, and industries like tourism have been decimated. In addition, as people work from home, many fear that office space and corporations will leave the city, something which irreparably damages the city's economy. What will you do to help New York's economy bounce back and return to pre-COVID heights? And what will we do if the office workers and tourists don't come back? And we're going to start with Ms. Laura for this one.
Well, one thing that I am going to be thrilled to do is start building up the artistic community. Billions of dollars are generated through our culture, through our arts and culture sector, and also the vibrancy, again, of the trauma that all of us as New Yorkers have experienced. So I think really putting our artists back to work, our gig workers and nighttime back to work once it's safe is going to be a very important part of building up the economy. In addition, when it comes to office spaces, yes, a lot of us have learned some businesses, not all, can move in a different direction. And can be remote. So we need to make sure that those that are not have the hazard pay during this time to be able to still survive, because some businesses need to still be in person, and we need to just bail them out, make sure that they can continue to be here to serve our needs and employ our neighbors.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Next, we're going to have Ms. Haller answer.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go to first Mr. Pasmino.
So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I definitely would like to implement some, kind of restaurant week or festival type situations where we can encourage the people of District 11 to patronize each other's businesses. We have, we do a lot of festivals here on Riverdale Ave that I think are very, beneficial. I think that, with COVID, post-COVID, once everything starts getting back to normal, I like to work on the transportation system within our district to make sure that it's easier to commute within our district. I believe that we need to get people off of the system and off of social welfare programs. So I really would encourage people to incorporate themselves. My office would be there to help educate, demystify what it means to be an independent business owner and incorporate yourself so that, if, do what you love. If you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life. Eitan, I've got a chance to hear your music. People who, if you crochet, whatever it is, get yourself out there, get yourself incorporated, get, the ability to navigate the same tax brackets that a lot of the wealthy people do because they're independent business owners.
Thank you, Mr. Pasmino, and we're going to go to Ms. Haller.
Yeah, sorry, I think I'm having connectivity issues. Eitan, we are going to come back. New York City is going to bounce back. There is no question. Those of us who were here during 9/11 and felt the same way, New York City bounced back. How did it do it? It diversified its industry. Can you see me or am I frozen? Because you're all frozen.
No, we see you. Good.
You see me? Okay, good. Because you're all frozen. So I'm just going to keep talking. We will come back. What we're going to do is we're going to invest. I published a plan called the Bronx Pandemic Restructuring Plan that calls for investment in training, education, and job creation, and the jobs that are going to take us from here into the future. Those are jobs for people dealing with people, social workers, teachers, elder care workers. Those are jobs that are green jobs. Food, urban agriculture, green roofs, solar panels, retrofitting, all of that is the stuff that we're going to invest in right now. And it's going to bring us to the future. And that's how we're going to get through. We're going to use the opportunity of the real estate sector being depressed to take back space for the community and move forward. And I'm sure my time is up, but you're all still frozen.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Now we're going to have Mr. Paternak.
Thank you. So yeah, businesses are leaving New York right now. They're running to states where they believe that they're going to get preferable tax treatment. So what we need to do is, make sure that we have essentially an attractive city as well. One of the things we really need to do citywide is to reform the way our tax assessments are done to lower the tax rates for individuals. I was just speaking to somebody the other day whose tax had basically doubled in the last 4 or 5 years. We need to finally get to that issue. make it an affordable place, like with the tax rates. That's one thing. As far as commercial office space, we need to make changes within the zoning laws to permit that office space to go to residential use. Again, we don't want vacant office space all over the city of New York. And there's different types of office space. There's A, there's B, there's different types. We need to be flexible with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paternak. And next we're going to have Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. You know, all of us adults up here, you know, we found a fruitful world because our forefathers planted for us, and we in turn have to plant for you. That's why I became a public school teacher. You know, that's why I stood with the union workers at Key Food when they were fired, shoulder to shoulder with those workers outside their store picketing, because those workers were fired in the middle of a pandemic. And how could they provide for their families? You know, so happy to announce, like, they got their jobs back a while back, and now I can shop at Key Food again. It's why in my plan for reopening schools, I believe we need to reopen for the younger children and prioritize younger children. Because how can a family get back to work if they have to stay home watching their kids, or if they have to pay a babysitter or childcare? It's untenable. So reopening, standing with our workers, those are two vital aspects of what we can do on the city council to get us back on our feet.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. And finally, we're going to have Mr. Berkeley.
Yeah, Eton, I agree with Ms. Haller and everything. New York City is going to bounce back, all right? But what we need to do is we need to invest in job creation. We need to open up those Broadway theaters like Ms. Mino Laura said. You know, we need to get people back to work. Listen, a lot of our tourists come in for the plays downtown. It's going to happen. But what we need to do is we need to also invest in entrepreneurship. All right. We have to give tax breaks. We have to, like Paternak said, right? We have to restructure the tax code so that these companies don't leave, because we want them to stay here. We want them to come back. And trust me, they will come back. All we have to do is give them the right incentives. All right. They'll be back. Trust me.
Thank you so much. Our next question concerns the climate crisis. As students, the climate crisis is particularly relevant to us. The city of New York has taken many aggressive steps to combat climate change with the end goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050. But these measures can be very costly. As the city faces a budgetary crisis, how do you, if at all, plan to advance the initiatives the city has taken with the end goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050? Up first is Ms. Haller.
Sorry, Tyler, I think you went on mute in the middle of the question. I didn't hear you the whole thing.
Oh, that's all right. I'll repeat it. As students, climate change impacts our generation more than any other. As the city faces a budgetary crisis, how do you plan, if at all, to advance these climate initiatives with the end goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050?
Yeah, so Tyler, a couple of things with the premise of the question. First of all, my whole platform is equity, resilience, and sustainability, because they come hand in hand and they're all connected. By investing in the solutions that we need to get to zero carbon, and I maintain that 2050 is too late, we will stimulate the economy. It is only by making those changes that we will make people healthier tomorrow, will address the long-term climate crisis, and will create what we need to get through this. It does not necessarily cost us more money to do what we need to do. It is exactly the process of doing what we need to do.
Thank you so much. Up next is Mr. Pasmino.
Yeah, so I think, you know, dealing with the fact that we're having this exodus of people leaving the city and whatnot, you know, we can try to take back some of the land and whatnot and try to convert that towards, you know, whether it's community farms, community-based, you know, try to get regreen those areas and whatnot. And I think that it's important that we maintain, you know, the integrity of our neighborhoods and whatnot, so that I make sure that anybody who does want to build has to really do high impact environmental studies. And I'd almost give the people in the communities say on whether or not we allow and give bids and allow certain contractors and to even build in our area if they're going to try to build these monstrosities in our area.
Thank you, Mr. Pasmino. Up next is Ms. Laura.
One of the things I love the most about the environmental justice fight is that it's led by young people. And I always trust young people in my life because they seem to know more than most adults I know. And one of the things is investment. We've seen how history teaches us that when government invests, economy moves forward and we're able to build back. So the way to build back is by tackling the environmental injustice, by getting to carbon zero, right? So we need to create a municipal jobs training program that will transition us from the fossil fuel industry to the green industry. And that will build jobs, it will create good paid jobs, and then it'll retrofit buildings, it'll put green roofs, it'll subsidize our homeowners to be able to do that. And that will tackle two things at the same time while we're meeting our climate change goals.
Thank you so much, Ms. Laura. Next, we have Mr. Berkeley.
Okay, you're right. With the climate control thing, we need to move on this right away, all right? Because you guys are gonna be mostly affected, all right? So we definitely need to go green. And we also need to know this, Eton, right? Are you Eton or? I get Pat. Well, I'm talking to you. All right. I apologize. All right. But what we definitely need to keep in and, up on the top that the Bronx, right, with the asthma rate and everything, right, we need to go green. We need to get clean air as soon as possible. We can't wait. You're right. So I would do whatever I need to do. I'd have to really look into it, but I would try to, it's like a race to clean air. We definitely need it. It affects our farms, our food, it affects our air, and that's where we get the high asthma rate. And the Bronx, of all boroughs, the Bronx is #1. So we need to get to zero as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berkeley. Up next, we have Mr. Paternak.
Great question. How do you attack climate change with limited money? All right, post-pandemic. First, we need proper implementation of Local Law 79, which is one of the most aggressive local laws that we've seen to attack climate change. We will see with proper implementation that will actually generate income for the city, which we can move into other areas. Second, through public-private partnerships, financing opportunities, show individuals, show companies, show businesses, show buildings, show property owners how it can make sense, create the financing opportunities to do so. And that's how we do it with a limited budget right now, immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Paternak.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. So one, I think council as a whole we need to create a climate caucus, because legislation that goes through the council environmental legislation does not just go through the resiliency committee, the environment and sanitation committee. Every committee, every piece of legislation can have that lens on it. For example, the education committee. I believe in all schools, we should have access to a school garden. We need deep investment in school garden. I taught environmental science when I was a teacher at John F. Kennedy campus. I saw the impact it had on a child's education and a child's life. Every school needs that. And in our upper grades, we need job training. We need to invest in the upper education so that we have green, so that when they get out of high school and go into college or go into work, they can have green jobs. We can collaborate with our unions to do that. And we need to invest in green infrastructure like green roofs, bioswales, and the daylighting of Tibbetts Brook.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. And our next question is going to be about the relationship between the state and local government. The mayor and governor have been at odds with each other on issues and personality for multiple years. And this problem was exacerbated by the pandemic, with the mayor and governor not being able to send one clear, unified message to the public. The SAR community experienced this problem firsthand when we had one of the first COVID cases in all of New York, and we were getting different and sometimes conflicting messages from both the governor's office and from the mayor's office. How can we prevent this from happening in the future? And do you think that the relationship between the city and state needs to be recalibrated? And we're going to start off with Mr. Berkeley.
Oh, well, first of all, I want to say Hey, Eton, I call Tyler you, but now I see it's you. All right. Well, listen, first of all, the governor and the mayor, they're two grown men. All right. I don't even want to come in between them because, you know, they have enough on their hands. They have to decide themselves as grown-ups and stop acting like kids. All right. Once I get into the city government, if I do get there, right, what I would be doing, concentrating on, is just bringing the correct information, right, and resources to the District 11. That's what I would do. Now, do they need to come together? Yes, they do need to come together. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's called that bravado because they're both Italian or whatever. I don't know what it is. So I don't want to even get between them. But like I said, I would do the best for District 11 with bringing resources and bringing the information necessary to District 11.
Thank you, Mr. Berkeley. And next we have Mr. Dinowitz for this question.
Thank you. They need to stop their bickering because at the end of the day, our children, our working families, our older adults, or people with disabilities get hurt. And we've seen this most acutely with the COVID pandemic. When I was a UFT chapter leader, I think I was 23 when I was elected to that position. There were some days I was with the principal and we were butting heads. And other days I would work with the principal to work together to move the school forward. At the end of the day, you have to be able to have working relationships with people. That is just what I've done throughout my career, whether it's as a UFT chapter leader, whether it's advocating for accessibility on our subways, which I've done, and whether it's working with and advocating for union workers or our children. We all should have the same goals. And I believe that all of us in government do have the same goals. It just takes someone who has the experience working with people, respectfully disagreeing them, but moving forward to get things done for the people for the people you're trying to help.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. And next, Ms. Haller.
Power rushes to the vacuum. When we have lack of leadership, then there is conflict. What we need to do as city council people is hold the mayor accountable. And if we are not seeing mobilization for our children, we need to say, let's go, city. How are we getting these schools back open? And that's what we need to do. Also, the good news is January 1st, we're going to have a new January 1st, 2022, there's going to be a new mayor in City Hall. So let's start with that and building new relationships and supporting the kind of person that we want to have. And I seem to be frozen again.
You're good. You're good. You're good.
I'm good. That's it. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Next, Mr. Pasmino.
I mean, you know, like I said in my opening statement, I believe that the mismanagement between the governor and the mayor and that party in particular is the reason why I even got involved in local level politics. I mean, what I would want to do is basically organize District 11 so well that, you know, our voices reverb in Albany and they hear our voices and whatnot. So, I mean, my main goal, my first 100 days is to get representatives and maybe possibly multiple representatives in all the electoral districts to work with in combination with my office continued constituent services. So my office is not just going to be, you know, there's going to be an outreach program. I'm going to try to work out some form of a tax incentive or tax break for people who volunteer their time to organize their communities. And I think just as long as we organize ourselves, then, you know, united, you know, there's no stopping us.
Thank you, Mr. Pasmino. And next, Ms. Laura.
Yes, it absolutely needs to be recalibrated. It needs to be completely transformed. Their relationship, I think bickering is a nice way to say it, because it was completely disrespectful to all of us, to New Yorkers. We are all New Yorkers. New York City are also New Yorkers. And it seemed at times that they forgot about us, and they were just, their ego was getting in the way. So that's part of the reason why, that's the biggest reason why I think that happened. And we have to change that. We have to work with our state. This is one New York, and we need to be able to engage, to have conversations, and not to put people in the middle, not put our schools in the middle of this. It is the responsibility of leadership to be taking on those fights, to be engaging, and to be working together for the common good.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. And finally, for this question, Mr. Paternak.
Thank you. So, yes, needs to be recalibrated, but I think we're always going to see a tension between, governors and mayors. I mean, I think that's just, let's be realistic about it. I think as council members, what we can do, however, is make sure that we have an Albany agenda, making sure that all of our council members are working together to make sure we have one group of items. We rely on Albany for a lot of things. So we need to work together as council members, making sure that we have a common New York City agenda. And I think that's what we could realistically do, and make sure that that agenda, those important items, are constantly brought out, and making sure that the mayor knows it and the governor knows it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paternak. We will now be moving on to the short answer question segment of tonight's town hall. These questions will have 15-second answers. Our first one concerns the implementation of ranked choice voting. So as we mentioned earlier, this will be one of the first elections in New York with ranked choice voting. Do you support the implementation of ranked choice voting? And if you're comfortable with it, could you tell us which fellow candidate you'll be ranking second on your ballot? We will start off with Ms. Haller. You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay.
We have two of you.
No, just stick with the video. I'm having major Wi-Fi issues. Okay, I support ranked choice voting wholeheartedly. Ranked choice voting allows different voices. It brings us away from the incumbency. It brings us away towards new kinds of politics. And I am happily supporting Ms. Mino Laura as my number 2 choice.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Up next, we have Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. I support ranked choice voting, but I have been deeply disturbed by the Campaign Finance Board's lack of outreach and lack of education, particularly for our older adults who have less access to the internet, and for our communities of color. They need to be doing much more outreach, particularly in a multilingual approach, because people are essentially going to be disenfranchised by not having a second or third place vote or fifth place vote.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dinowitz. Up next, we have Mr. Paternak.
Hey, great question. So 74% of the city voters did this by referendum. Yes, I do support ranked choice voting. I think it levels the playing field a little bit. I haven't selected, I'm in discussions with candidates about, possibly getting together, but at this time, I just haven't done anything yet.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paternak.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Laura.
Yes, I think we need, I completely support ranked choice voting, ranked choice voting, my ESL, speaking of multilingual, yo pudiera decir esto en español, sometimes that happens at this time of day. Yes, it will enfranchise all of so many more of us, but I also think it's been done, it hasn't been done the right way. We need to do more. I'm proud to have done trainings in Spanish on this, and I will be supporting Jessica Haller as my number 2.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Mr. Berkeley.
Yes, I definitely support ranked choice voting. I think it's a good thing. Although I think that the educational part should have been out there and should still be out there, because a lot of people are confused. All right. And as far as my second, yes, it will most likely be Mr. Paternak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berkeley. Lastly, we have Mr. Pasmino.
I'm definitely I'm a person who wants to represent the people. So if 70% of the population wanted it, then, I'm still, I agree that there needs to be more education on it for sure. I can certainly, I know who I don't, as a resident, don't want to be, who I feel is maybe too progressive for my tastes. I really, possibly I'm willing to talk to Carlton and to Dan really about, I feel like they're more in line with kind of more my views. I respect Carlton in terms of his work with the police department, and Dan seems, I don't know, borderline conservative to me. Hope that's not, I mean that as a good thing. Fiscal responsibility and organization is good.
Okay, so for our next question, as you mentioned, in special elections, candidates create their own party lines to run on. What is the party line you are running on, and why, in a short sentence? And we're going to start off with Ms. Laura.
My party line is justice for all. And that's what I'm doing. I think we need to bring our entire community together, all of our neighborhoods. And I believe government's job is to be working for those most vulnerable. And when those receive justice, all of us receive justice. So that's my platform, and that's what I'm going to be working every single day for.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Next, Mr. Berkeley.
All right, my party is called the People's Party, and the reason why it's called the People's Party is because if granted the councilman, I will sit down, and before I make any decisions, the people will make the decisions. And when the people make the decisions, that's what it will be. All I will do is just enforce the decisions. I won't be making any decisions on my own. It will be the people's choice.
Thank you, Mr. Berkeley. And now Mr. Pasmino.
My party's name is the Patriot Party. I know that there's been a little bit of like a hoopla about that name, but I chose it way before it became a big thing in the media. The reason why I chose it was because this past political season was so divisive that, you know, I want to remind people that we're all Americans, no matter what, whether you lean left, you go right, we're all Americans, we're all in this together. And that's why I went with the Patriot Party. And same, you know, I echo Carlton's sentiment. You know, you will be my bosses. I don't accept any monetary donations from any unions or anything, because I do not want any, you know, I don't want any chains binding me to them. So I'm here to represent 100% the constituents of the 11th district.
Thank you, Mr. Pasmino. And next, Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. My party name is Your Bronx Voice. My career as an educator, my work with the UFT, my work for working families, for older adults, for people with disabilities, has been about making sure that people are heard. So my party is Your Bronx Voice.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. Next, Mr. Paternak.
Yeah, the name of my party is Community First, because I do believe that all of our different neighborhoods and all of those people do come first. I will say, Mr. Pasmino, I wouldn't say I'm conservative. However, I do believe in government transparency, government efficiency, and I do look at the pennies and everything that is being spent within government agencies, just so we can maximize it.
Thank you, Mr. Paternak. And lastly, for this question, Ms. Hallett.
My party line is new leadership, because I firmly believe that the same old thinking that got us into the series of crises that we are in today is not the thinking that we need to get us out of it, and we need new leadership.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. And then for our last short answer question, I'm going to pass it over to Tyler.
Thank you so much, Eitan. So in the summer, the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America had a questionnaire for municipal candidates who are seeking endorsement. This endorsement asked candidates to boycott Israel. If you were invited to go on a trip to Israel, would you go? First, Ms. Tyler. Ms. Haller, you're first.
Oh, sorry. I didn't catch that. I'm really sorry. Well, so my father's Israeli. I can't even tell you the number of times that I've been to Israel. I believe that the only way to solve the issues in the Middle East is to go with 2 feet, look to the north, look to the south, look to the east, look to the west, and see the situation on the ground. It is also not the responsibility of the city council to be solving the issues in the Middle East. We are concerned with what's going on in the city. So I think that there's, you know, trouble there. But I absolutely also published an article questioning the intentions of the DSA in the Jewish Week in those questions.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Ms. Laura.
So I think the job of city council is focusing on how we run the best city that we can. And how do we create the laws that put our people first? If there's opportunities to travel to other countries to learn that, then it is the responsibility of city council to pay for those trips, to make sure that we as city council members and legislators can do that, can learn from others. Right now, I don't think any trip is going to be happening because we need to focus on our city. We don't have the funding to be spending on trips for city council members. So I would not be traveling to any country right now because we need to focus on the Bronx and in New York City.
So just to clarify, if asked in the future, would you say yes or no to a trip?
I would say yes to a trip if it's paid by city council, if it's paid by public dollars, so that we're able to channel it and fund it.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Mr. Paternak.
So I remember the question and I remember talking about it. And I think I said if it wasn't an outright anti-Semitic comment, it was a pretty loud dog whistle. I objected to the question when it was stated. So for me, yes, I would, go on a trip. We live in the most diverse city in the world. And if I could learn more about cultures by visiting their countries, I certainly would go.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Mr. Pasmino.
I love history and such a historical city. I would love to go visit Israel, even whether or not, maybe even after, whether or not I was invited or not, I would love to go over there and whatnot. Also, I think it's important that we build connections, especially for students and young people. Not everybody wants to go to university right away. So I want to build, relationships with other countries, other cities and whatnot, to be able to provide opportunities for students if they don't want to go to college right away, or if they don't want to be homebound and they want to go to a different area. I would love to be able to coordinate opportunities for students in the Bronx to go move to Israel, go move to, Las Vegas, or move to wherever they want to, because not everybody wants to stay where they grew up. Some people do. And I want to help those people too. But the people who do want to go out, I'd like to be able to bridge those connections.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pasmino. Up next, we have Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. The question of would we commit to not go to Israel on the city council? I will say tonight what I said back in, I think, September. No, that is absolutely not a commitment I would make. As a Jewish person, I felt a familiar feeling of being singled out. It's a feeling I felt at some places I've worked. It was, as Dan said, anti-Semitic. To single out Israel as the only country you would commit not to going to. I thought it was a disgusting question to even ask it in the first place. And the idea of just boycotting something you don't agree with for whatever reason is absolutely disgusting.
Thank you so much. And lastly, we have Mr. Berkeley.
Yes, I would commit to going. I always wanted to visit Israel. It's one of my things on my bucket list. And if I went out there, even though I don't think it's a councilman's job, but if I went out there, being law enforcement, I would try to bring peace any way I can out there, because it's a lot that's been going on for years. Those wars over there have been going on since the beginning of time. And I think it needs to stop. And if I can help in any way, that's what I would do.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Berkeley. And now we are going to go back to another long answer one. This one is going to be about policing. Following the shooting of Jacob Blake and the deaths of George Floyd and others, policing in our city has again become a topic of great concern and interest. One problem is over-policing, where increased and sometimes excessive police presence leads not just to obvious abuses like George Floyd's death, but also heavy-handed law enforcement responses to minor offenses. Another is under-policing, where slow response times and an ineffective policing provides little help to communities, especially at a time when gun violence is increasing after decades of. Please speak for a minute about how you think New York City should handle issues related to law enforcement and how you would help make the system provide equal justice for all. And Mr. Berkeley, as a former member of the NYPD, we're going to have you start this one.
Okay, well, you're right. I'm a retired New York City detective, and the first thing we need to do is to bring crime down is I would put foot patrolmen back out there on the street. All right, that's a strategy that has always worked, but for some reason police turned away from it. Now, as far as detention, you're right. We need to root out. Look, 90% of all of the police officers are good, hardworking men and women that want to do a good day's work and go home safe. However, there's about 10% out there that's bad. That's why I supported the law called 50A. And what that does is, it puts the disciplinary records of police officers on view where you can see it now. So then that way we can rid out bad police officers, because there's a code blue call, and police will not give up. Police will not tell on other police. But yes, I would bring that out, and we need to get rid of the code blue. And I would make sure that every community was safe.
Mr. Berkeley. Next, we're gonna have Mr. Pasmino.
Once again, I believe, all situations, it's accountability from the top down. So I believe it's a mismanagement of the mayor and his appointees on how they handle situations. I think they need to make sure that they don't comment until they know all the facts before they get involved and exasperate a situation. I do believe the reforms I do agree with is, having in the academy, have the officers, before they get on the street, go learn and meet the people within their communities that they're going to be policing, maybe incentivize having police officers live in the communities that they work in. I also think, policemen are humans too, believe it or not. So I really think that this is a mental health situation. And I think that we need increased funds for mental health and check-ins for the police officers, because it's a very tough job to have. And I believe that, we need to make sure that we're taking care of them, and so that way we don't have them, take their own lives, take it out on their families, or on the public. So I think it's a very high stress job, and I think we need to take better care of them.
Thank you, Mr.
To help, fix the situation.
And just a quick note, we did shorten the time a bit. Sorry if we weren't clear for this question, just for timing purposes, so we have time for full closing statements, and we will be cutting off for this one. Next up, Ms. Haller.
We need more accountability from the police, and that's both fiscal and behavioral. The police department currently spends $900 million in overtime. Anyone needing $900 million in overtime has a management issue. On the other hand, I've been endorsed by Oliver Coppell, who was elected in the Northwest Bronx 10 times over the last 40 years. And one of the things he said to me was, the only thing people in the Northwest Bronx ask for more every single year is more police. So people want to feel connected to their police departments. We have 3 precincts in this area, and they want to feel that there's safety on the streets and they're taken care of. So we need to give them the resources to have the training and to engage with people safely.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Next, Mr. Paternak.
Yeah, so first, I'm not one of the folks who believe in defunding the NYPD right now. I don't think that this is the time for it. 88% of the NYPD budget is personnel. 1/3 of that personnel are civilian employees. We have a lot going on. They have a difficult job. So that's one of the views where we differ. Management is definitely an issue. We need to work on the culture of reporting. One of the biggest problems is that police officers, don't report other police officers because their lives depend on it. We have to look at it. We have to have a creative discussion about how we can work on that, on whether it's self-reporting or the supervising reporting when the bad apples are found. I agree with Carlton, patrol back on the streets. I grew up with patrol in the 1980s, having a local cop. I remember 231st and Broadway, always seeing patrol there, always. And we need to get back with that. I completely agree with Carlton on that. So reform the department, but not to defund.
And next, Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. There are a few big ticket items. One, we need to really clearly define the role of policing. Right now, they're asked to do everything. And if there's non-violent mental health needs, I don't think that should be the police. If there are food street cart vendors, they shouldn't be. The permits should not be enforced by the police. And there are good bills in the council that seek to shift those responsibilities so police can focus on crime. Then there's accountability. And I'm proud to have been endorsed by Senator Jamal Bailey, who was the force in the state Senate on repealing 58, which shielded police misconduct records. I believe that the CCRB needs to be given authority to hold police officers accountable. And I think with that, then we can start building community between our police officers. And so they can do the role of keeping us safe.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. And lastly for this question, Ms. Laura.
Yeah, I agree very closely with Eric on this one. This is one that I think, are close on. We need to end police brutality. It was painful last year for many of us. And how we do that, we need to keep them more accountable. We need to give more power to the Civilian Review Board, the CCRB. Commissioner Shea needs to be fired. He cannot be there. We have seen the culture. Dan spoke about the culture, and that's held from the top. So he needs to not be there. We also need to get rid of the other things that take them away from preventing and solving crime. We do need more community policing. We need to build those relationships with our neighbors, but we can't do it if they're handling mental health crises, if they're handling school safety, if they're handling other things that other agencies, Department of Health, Department of Education, are more equipped to do. So I am for reallocating these responsibilities and these funds to these other agencies who are better equipped to do the work so they won't end in violence and murder.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. And now I'm going to hand it off to Tyler for our closing statements.
Thank you so much, Eitan. So as you just said, we will begin closing statements now. Closing statements will be 45 seconds long, and we ask that in your closing statements, you note what differentiates you from other candidates and why you are the right choice for young people, SAR, and the Riverdale Jewish community as a whole. Thank you. We will start with Mr. Dinowitz.
Thank you. I am Eric Dinowitz. You know, my wife and I are raising our twin boys here in the Bronx, not too far from SAR High School. And my life and career and community service has all been rooted right here in the Bronx, teaching children with special needs, including at JFK and Walton, advocating for colleagues as a U of T chapter leader, bringing an elevator to the Mosholu stop on the 4 train, fighting cuts to bus service, rallying with local union grocery workers at the Key Food, reforms to make absentee voting easy and accessible, advocacy for seniors and vaccines. My successful work has been rooted here, bringing people together and getting results. And it's work that is recognized by a number of our local representatives, including Congressman Torres and Espaillat, Senator Bailey, and Assemblywoman Jackson, and Ruben Diaz Jr., the U of T, DC 37, RWDSU, EMS workers, 32BJ, our firefighters, CLC, and HTC and Stonewall Democrats. And it's that work rooted here in our community and my vision and my proven ability to assemble a broad and diverse coalition of support, which demonstrates that I'm the candidate who's going to make your voice heard at City Hall and who will be an advocate for our children, working families, older adults, and people with disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Dinowitz. Next, we have Ms. Haller.
I am running for city council because the earth is on fire. I am doing this for you. The Riverdale Jewish community has nurtured me, my husband, my 4 children for the last 20 plus years. It is this community that has allowed me to thrive, that has sustained me while I transitioned from a career in the corporate world into one dealing with public policy. I'm building a diverse coalition of all sorts of people who know that looking into the future and thinking about how it is that we're going to create equitable community where everyone has what they need to thrive, resilient community where we can withstand what's coming no matter what's on the horizon, and a sustainable one where we're satisfying our needs today without compromising the one in the future is what we need to put forth. So I'm thrilled to be endorsed by Ruth Messenger, the social justice warrior, Oliver Coppell, No IDC, the Jewish Climate Action Network, North Bronx Racial Justice, and a whole bunch of other organizations, including the League of Conservation Voters, who are joining the team. And I ask you from the Riverdale Jewish community to join my team so we can continue in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Next, we have Laura.
Thank you so much for hosting this event. I love being with young people. Makes my heart soar. So we're living through one of the most difficult moments in history. I'm an immigrant who built an organization from scratch and kept my staff employed during this pandemic. I know what it takes to do the impossible. And I've spent my career teaching thousands of students that their stories, their identity is a superpower. The city's recovery is our chance to tackle racial, economic, health, and environmental injustice. But we need the courage to do it. Our legislation and our budgets must put people first. I'm proud to be the progressive voice endorsed by the Jewish Vote and Working Families Party, who will be putting people first. I hope you will rank me at the top of your ballot on March 23rd, and look forward to be building coalitions with the entire district and making sure that District 11 is a model for the rest of the city.
Thank you so much, Ms. Laura. Next, we have Mr. Berkeley.
I'm running because the people in my area asked me to run, and mostly the people who did it are are the seniors. I'm the type of guy, I'm not a career politician. I'm the type of guy that will help you shovel the snow in your driveway, you know, will walk down the street with you and have a conversation. All right. I open my small business so that young people in the area can come into my small business, and I talk with them on a Saturday or a Friday night, just so that they can have a place to come to, because with this pandemic, everyone is stuck in the home, and we don't want to see our kids out in the street and all of a sudden they have a bad encounter with the police. All right. If given the chance, right, I will do the best I can. I can make good, hard, honest, and judgment, and I mean decisions, right? Hello? I can't hear you. What you were saying? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. And like I said, one other thing is I believe in change. Just to let you know that the last 40 years, every representative councilman has come from the Riverdale area. And I think it's time for change. And if given that change, I don't want Riverdale to be afraid of me. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Berkeley. Next, we have Mr. Pasmino.
Yeah, so I got involved because, like I said earlier, I'm just really unhappy with the supermajority and the party that's been in charge of New York State and the local governments. So I want to bring accountability back. I mean, in the business that I'm in, it's a very high accountability industry. Like if you don't get the job done, they'll fire you day one. You know, the day that you don't, make your day, you're gone the next day. So, I want to bring that level of accountability. What it takes to be a leader in, as an assistant director is communication. I want to bring that to my neighbors in the 11th district. I want to basically expand, my constituents office would be a very proactive outreach to have representatives in all of the electoral districts and organize. It's constant communication, checking up, follow through, be there personally, that personal touch to make sure that things are happening properly. And I want to, my phone number would be open 24/7 for anybody in case of emergency. And, I just basically want to bring accountability back to, to public service. I do not believe in political dynasties. I do not believe that the party that's been in charge of this state and this local government has done they've done a disservice to the people. And I want to basically, bring back, what it means to be a public servant.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pasmino. Lastly, we have Mr. Paternak.
Oh, thank you, Eitan, EPG, staff, faculty, families of SAR for hosting tonight. Again, this level of civic engagement is awesome. I'm running for city council because I love community service. I'm a third generation Bronxite. My parents instilled in me the value of community service from a young age. I've been on the community board for 12 years. I've been working with different organizations. I've been working with government agencies, elected officials. I've established relationships over the years. I love working with the community. I love problem solving. I am a liberal thinker, a hard worker, and I'll always be there for the community advocating. I'll admit when I'm wrong, and my views, I'll always listen to other folks. I've been endorsed by former Assembly member Michael Blake, by the Northwest Bronx Democrats, former candidate Dio Then, and most importantly, my biggest supporter, my mother, whom I love, adore, and she has always got my back. Thank you so much again for having me.
And with that, we conclude this evening's town hall meeting and candidate forum. I want to express our deep gratitude to all the candidates for joining us tonight for such a meaningful and thoughtful exchange of ideas and answers about so many important questions. I want to express as an institution our deep pride in the work of our students, Eitan Sanger, Tyler Fishman, ably assisted by Kira Pollard and Zach Hooker, and the rest of the EPG club for what I think really was a remarkable experience for them and a terrific resource for the school community and the broader community in District 11. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to register and to vote. Have a good evening.
Hey, Tyler, I know it's you, Tyler.
Tyler, thank you. Thank you also, Tyler. Thank you.
You all did a great job.
You guys, thank you. Thank you so much.
Great job.